Hello, I am Mudita, and welcome back to Satisfactory. This is episode 20 of the load balance playthrough, and today I'm going to tackle fused modular frames. I have almost all the alt recipes available to me. I'm going to utilize the solid steel ingot, steel rod, cast screw, encased industrial pipe, and the heavy encased frame recipes. These are great alternate recipes to save on raw resources and power. As much as I'd love to completely fill a Mark I belt and make 60 a minute, that would be a whole lot more resources and power than I want to use. 6 per minute will be more than I need just for storage, and I'll most likely split one off for a future project. I'm going to be using these nodes here. Let me try to briefly explain what's going to be going on. So I have this split into two parts. That top section is going to be using 288 iron ore. We're going to turn that into screws and plates and make our 24 reinforced iron plates that we'll be needing for the second portion. The second phase is going to be in two different towers. One is just going to be using the limestone to make concrete. All the rest of it is happening on top of the iron node, where we will first be making steel. That'll get used for both steel pipes and steel rods. We'll then make the encased industrial beams out of the pipes and the concrete, and modular frames out of the iron rods and reinforced iron plates. We'll also be bringing in 450 aluminum ingots from the aluminum factory next door to make our 300 aluminum casings. We'll also need nitrogen from not too far away. We'll then use 4 blenders to combine all the parts to make our 6 fused modular frames per minute. Let me run through the blueprints I'll be using. To start things off, I'll need 2 sets of the 4 smelters, 2 sets of the 5 smelters, and 2 sets of the 3 foundry blueprints. Moving up to constructors, I'll need 1 of my 2 constructor blueprint, 6 sets of 3 constructors, 2 sets of the 4 constructor, and 3 sets of the 5 constructor combo blueprints. I'll also need 2 sets of the 5 assembler combo blueprints, along with 4 sets of the 2 assembler blueprint. And last but not least for blueprints, I'll need 1 of each of my different manufacturer blueprints to give me a total of 3. I also need a total of 4 blenders, but because of the way I'm going to place these, I decided not to blueprint those. The next step is to build the towers, so let me get that done. And voila, towers are done. So let me give you a little glimpse into some of the process that I don't normally show. When I build these towers, especially when they start to get pretty tall like this one, is real similar to that one, what I'll do is I'll place one machine of what's going to be going on that floor, just so I make sure I build enough and it'll kind of help me visualize what's going on. Sometimes I'll even set the recipe if it's a project that I know is going to take me, more than one day. It just helps a lot when you can come back the next day, don't remember everything that I've done, and I can kind of have a visual representation. So I can go through my spreadsheet and make sure, okay, I've got enough floors of assemblers, enough floors of constructors, and that way I don't have to, in the middle of a project, realize that I needed one more floor here in the middle and have to extend it or anything like that. Not like I've ever done that before. So the top 2 floors are going to be the blenders, so I just didn't place those, but everything is in place. But I did learn my lesson from the last project. And what I'm going to do next, before we get into placing all the machines, I am going to set up some of the buses, like for example, getting the nitrogen over here. I'm going to set up my train lines and get that running so that I can make sure that the throughput is fine and have those kind of just syncing over here while I build everything else. So let me go ahead and get that done, and I'll show you what that looks like. All those buses are done. So now we've got both aluminum and coal sinking. I've got the pipeline ran over from the nitrogen node. So let me kind of run through everything real quick. I was originally going to run the pipe right under the train tracks, but I realized that there was a slight shortcut through here. So I just ran the pipe right through that little tiny cave. We've got our resource well pressurizer. The power, however, I did run over the top because that's just easier. So that's where the nitrogen is coming from. far as the aluminum goes, this was really easy because I need 450. Since each block of 5 smelters puts out 150, I just needed to group 3 together, rebalance, forgot that one, rebalance the sink, so now I have 546 left that's still available for any of my future projects. And as far as the coal goes, I'm getting my coal from way down over there. So I set up another train station, I rearranged my bauxite train because I realized they were both just push-pull systems, so I moved the bauxite one down so that I could throw another one in here, and so that now that one goes over there, brings the coal. This one does its short trip to the other side of the swamp to bring in the bauxite for all the aluminum. And let me show you the overly complex system I came up with over here. So it's easiest if I just delete some of these for right now. Okay, so the train drops off the coal. That all comes in right here. I think it's actually about to get some more right now. So I need 288 coal, and because I don't like my belts to stop and start and I just want them to flow smoothly, I decided to load balance the 228 out of the storage container. So to do that, I have a 270 line, the Mark III. I've got my smart splitter, even though I believe the way this is working, I could have just used a regular one. Either way, we've got a Mark I belt, so that's 60. So what I need to do is I need to take 270, I need 228, so I need to cycle 42 back into my storage container. So that's what this is doing. So we've got 60 going in here, so immediately 30 goes off and back into the storage, right? So I need to get another 12 into that merger. So I've got 30 left, and 12 and 30, well, basically 12 is 2/5 of 30. So that's what we're doing right here, is my good old 5-way split. So like with the other splits, if I was going to do it and get a full 5 ways, I would split this, and instead of this being a merger, it would be a splitter, and I would use all 3 outputs of that splitter. With this one, I need to use 2 of them. One of them needs to get cycled back into the beginning, and that's why we're using the merger here. So you take it from a 6-way split to a 5-way by doing that. So that right there is our 2/5 that's going back. So that's our 12 with the 30 right there. There's our 42, leaving 228 on this belt. The next step is to get it all built and belted up. So I'm gonna go ahead and skip ahead, and then I'll go floor by floor and show you how it all comes together. And just like that, it's all built and belted up. Isn't editing grand? So let's work through the smaller towers and then we'll get to the big one. So this one's real simple. We've just got 432 limestone being turned into concrete using the 5 constructor blueprints on both floors. So that's just load balance between the 2, which is real easy. Just one splitter. Half of it goes to one floor, the other half goes to the other. And then that just gets sent out and into the main tower. So let's run over to this one. This one is built on top of an iron node clocked to 288. So first step is obviously going to be to smelt them all. We have 10 smelters across the 2 floors. And then we've got 4 constructors doing our iron plates. Actually, I think it's 8 total. There's 2 floors of the 4 constructor blueprint. And then the next step is screws. So the only load balancing I think across this whole tower is this basically. Between these two, it needs 3/4 goes to the plates, 1/4 of the iron ingots goes to screws, which is why I really like the default recipe is cast screws and the plates. It's just really easy. I know the stitched iron plate with the iron wire is more efficient as far as the raw resources, just the numbers don't work out nearly as evenly as that does. The top 2 floors each have the 3 assembler blueprint doing the reinforced iron plates. Those get set all the way down and over and into the main tower. And here we are at the main tower. So this one is built on top of an iron node, clocked to 228. The first 2 floors are both smelters, so we've got 2 of the 4 smelter blueprints. The next 2 floors are foundries, so we're using the 3 foundry blueprints. And this is where some of the load balancing got started. So I needed to split off 24 because I needed 24 steel ingots for the steel rods. This is just kind of the remainder that needed to get grouped up with this to bring us to a total of 318. Let me show you how I split off the 24. So since we've got 3 foundries and they each output 57, so in total this is outputting 171, which is very much not a full Mark III since that can hold 270 per minute. So I needed to use the smart splitter and the funny little belt trick because if this only has 171, there's going to be large gaps on here, and if I only use the Mark I belt, there'll end up being gaps on here, which means I don't have the full 60, and that means that this isn't going to be the exact number that I'm looking for. So that's why I have the 2 different speed belts there, to make sure that this is a completely full Mark I belt, but we are limiting it to Mark I, because what I want to do is take 60, I want to split it 5 ways. 60 divided by 5 is 12. So if I have 2/5, that's my 24. So I have 60 going into a merger, and then this is my 5-way split that I've done so many times. So 1/2 is 3/5. The other half is the one that we need to loop back, technically 1/6. And then we have 2 of them go into a merger, and then that goes up to our steel rods. The next floor is 5 constructors, all clocked to 100%, making our aluminum casings. And the next 2 floors above that, we've got 12 constructors, using the 3 constructor blueprint 4 times to make our steel pipes. So with this one, this is a good example of why it's helpful to use the long math in the clock speed rather than just typing in the number or even doing the math in this field, and I'll show you why. So I need 212 steel pipes, and if I do 212 divided by 12, it ever so slightly changes. I lose 1 digit there, and now my steel ingot input has an extra 0.005 on top of it. So even if I were to type in 17.66666 as many times as I want, that's going to stay the same. Now, if I do the math here, 212 divided by the 12 machines, divided by the default speed of 20, multiply that by 100 to get the percentage, it drops it back down to 26.5, and you get that extra 6-7 on there. So at the end of the day, it wouldn't have affected all that much if they were off by 5 1,000ths. But if you're like me, I just like things to be as accurate as possible. And before we move on to the next floors, let me explain my horribly complicated way I decided to split up the steel pipes. So I only realized, just now realized that this is way more complicated than it needed to be. So I needed to split the pipes in between 72 and 140 between making the encased industrial beams and then the actual heavy modular frame recipe, right? I don't know why I didn't think, 140 would be just, a 120 line plus 20, and that would just be really easy to make. Instead, what I did is I took this, which each of these outputs at 17 2/3, so that means that 6 of them combined makes 106. So 106 is on this belt, and then I use my smart splitter to send the majority of it this way, so I use the 2 belt method. So we've got 60 going here, and so I basically wanted to split off 12. So that is I just love splitting things 5 ways, apparently. It's just stuck in my head. So that's what this is doing, is we've got this merger, because you start with the merger and then you split it. Here is half of it. So half of it is just going all the way down to another merger. Although a better way to put this is 3/5. And then the other bit is going to this splitter, which we need to use all 3 outputs. So one of them is going all the way down here. That's the final output. The other 2, one of them needs to cycle back to that first merger. And then the other one is going all the way down to this merger. So over here, we have a total of 34 that's left on this belt. And then we have our 72 because we sent everything down to this merger. And then I used the smart splitter to send the majority of it to the right. And then we just used the 2 belt trick again to limit it to 60. So that's how we split off the 72. The remaining 34 is being sent up to the next floor to be combined with this one to bring us to the 140. On the next floor, we've got the 2 constructors. These ones are making the steel rod alternate recipe, each clocked at 100%. Because I had that extra space, because I only needed the 2 constructors, this is where I did some of the load balancing for the concrete. So since I sent it all up on one line, but I needed to split it off between the encased industrial beams and the heavy encased frames, this is where I did it. So this is how I split it off to get the 44. So I've got 144 being sent up here, and then I basically just made 100, and then that's the remainder. So we've got the smart splitter with the belt trick, so I'm limiting this to 60, splitting it 3 ways so that there's 20 on each of these. So we're sending 20 back, and we've got 40 here. And then I basically did the same thing again to get the 60 to combine with that 40 to make 100, leaving me with 44 on this belt. Moving on to the next 2 floors, we're using 4 sets of the 2 assembler blueprint for the modular frames. We're getting the reinforced iron plates from that tower that's being bussed over, and all of the iron rods are coming from the floor below. I could have shrank the blueprints to make it a little bit easier to work with inside of the 6x6 instead of an 8x8 with this many, but instead I just decided to flip kind of the splitters around. We put 2 in here, so all of the inputs are being brought in from here, and then half are being sent to this floor, and then half are obviously being used on this floor. So that's how I split it between the 2. Moving on to the next floor, this is where I decided to expand it to the 8x8 because this is where I needed 5 assemblers, and this doesn't conveniently fit in my 6x6, and 3 manufacturers just fit so much easier here, and then it's just got plenty of space for the blenders. These 5 assemblers are making the encased industrial beams using the encased industrial pipe alternate recipe. Since this is only on 1 floor, it's real easy, just plug both of the inputs in and we're good to go. Moving on to the next floor, we've got the 3 manufacturers. These are all making our heavy modular frames using the heavy encased frame recipe. I have them underclocked to 2 each because we need 6 in total. And last but not least, the top 2 floors. So we've got 4 blenders in total. These are all using just the default Fused Modular Frame recipe. The heavy modular frames are being built right below. The aluminum casings are just a few floors below that. The nitrogen gas is coming up through the whole tower from the bottom, but thankfully it doesn't need head lift, so no pumps required. And now it's time for my favorite part, getting to turn it on and seeing how long it takes. So I am going to plug these in to the factory at 2 different times because I'll need the coal much sooner before the aluminum casing is basically the last thing that's going to get plugged up. Because it takes so long to get the reinforced iron plates all the way over here, I'll keep the stopwatch accurate, but I'll probably cut out a bit of that from the video. So let's flip the switch and see how long it takes. And there's the first 2 fused modular frames. I'll let this run for just a few more minutes and make sure that this is staying on at 100%. But my guess is that should be mission complete. And it didn't need to stutter at all, so it looks like we are good to go. I now have 6 fused modular frames per minute headed over to the train station to get loaded up to the same train that stops here and heads over to the storage. And that is mission complete. The next project will be electromagnetic control rods, and I'm going to head out to the desert. So look forward to that, and thanks for watching.